Tonight we slip through the narrow, torch-lit alleys of Renaissance Venice, where the air smells not of romance or refinement, but of rot. The canals, once shimmering arteries of trade and travel, have soured into open sewers. You're standing at the edge of one now, nostrils flared in protest, trying not to gag. The water below is thick, greenish-brown, sluggish. You spot a bloated fish, or is it a rat, drifting past the barnacled hull of a gondola. The perfume? It's not yet on your skin, but it's already in your future, born of this very filth. In this world, scent is not just adornment, it's a weapon, a defense mechanism against a city at war with its own stench. The Renaissance, for all its gilded art and scientific awakenings, still lacks plumbing. Waste from chamber pots is casually tossed from upper windows with a shouted warning, if you're lucky. Urine, dung, fish guts, and animal hides stew in the summer heat. The entire city is marinating, so you reach for the vial, not out of vanity, but necessity. The perfume you dab under your nose is strong, rose oil laced with spices, soaked in alcohol and a bit of camphor. It doesn't smell good, not really. It smells powerful, like it might punch the sewage back into the canal. The Venetian elite call it acqua di rose, and it's everywhere, on gloves, in handkerchiefs, sprayed on dogs, and even drizzled into masks worn during carnival. Here's the twist. This obsession with perfume doesn't start in the courts of Florence or the salons of Paris. It starts in Venice, right here, where decay forces invention. The city becomes Europe's gateway to the East, importing rare spices, resins, and flower oils along the Silk Road and by ship from Arabia. It's not coincidence, it's self-preservation through scent. A mainstream historical fact? Venetian merchants in the 15th century built entire empires importing myrrh, frankincense, cinnamon, and attar of roses. Their perfumed cargoes were as valuable as gold. These weren't just olfactory luxuries, they were also fumigants, believed to cleanse the air of disease. Remember, this was a time when bad air, or miasma, was blamed for plagues. If it stinks, it kills. If it smells sweet, it heals. So it follows that every wealthy household owns a pomander, a tiny orb-shaped cage filled with aromatic herbs and woods, hung on a chain or slipped into a sleeve. Yours is brass, warm from your skin, and vaguely metallic beneath the scent of clove. And if you're rich enough, the pomander isn't just a trinket, it's a statement piece, adorned with enamel and pearls. Because smelling good means you have the money not to smell at all. But here's the quirky bit. Those same canals that reek of decay also make Venice humid, and humidity, ironically, traps scent. Perfume here doesn't dissipate. It hangs in the air like gossip, clinging to your linen like the smoke of 1,000 incense burners. One minute you're choking on the odor of rotting fish. The next, your senses are assaulted by the thick, spiced cloud trailing behind a passing noblewoman. You sneeze. She doesn't turn. Perfume in Venice is also armor. Now, historians still argue whether the rise of Venice as a perfume hub was purely economic or deeply cultural. Some say it was just about trade, get exotic goods, sell them high. Others insist it was an existential response to a city drowning in its own waste. After all, when your entire infrastructure is built atop water and there's nowhere for the refuse to go, you either die from the stink or you outstink it. So here you are, a few drops of liquid luxury dabbed behind each ear. Your breath catches as a gust of wind brings a new wave of canal rot. You press a perfumed handkerchief to your nose and push onward, past gondoliers humming through clenched teeth and bakers tossing lavender into their ovens to keep the rats out. Venice, you realize, doesn't just sell perfume. It breathes it. It needs it. In this city, scent isn't a choice. It's a survival tactic. You're still walking. The stone beneath your feet is slick with yesterday's rain, today's fish guts, and 1,000 forgotten secrets. The perfume on your sleeve, so carefully applied earlier, now battles against a new and terrible aroma. Death. It's the 16th century, and the plague has found its way into Venice again, drifting in on the same trade winds that carry your beloved rosewater. You see it in the shuttered windows, the silent bells, the priest hurrying by with a scarf wrapped over his face. No one says plague aloud. They don't need to. You can smell it. Perfume suddenly becomes more than etiquette. It becomes armor. You pull out your pomander again, the tiny orb now stuffed with even more cloves and myrrh, and hold it to your face like a lifeline. You're not alone. Every person of means is doing the same, flooding their homes with incense, soaking their linens in scented vinegars, bathing, rarely but symbolically, in floral waters believed to drive the sickness away. Mainstream fact? During outbreaks of plague across Renaissance Europe, especially in cities like Venice and Florence, perfumed substances were believed to protect against illness. Physicians advised citizens to sweeten the air, fearing that bad smells carried the Black Death. It wasn't just preference. It was protocol. You reach the home of a friend, a merchant's wife who's recently lost 2 sons. Her door is marked with a crude charcoal X. Inside, she's draped herself in lavender sachets, burning something foul in the fireplace that she insists is rosemary. The scent is overwhelming, a thick, cloying blend of flowers and fear. And here's the quirky bit. Among the poor, perfume was sometimes literally worn as a necklace, little cloth pouches filled with crushed herbs tied around the neck or sewn into a collar. For those without access to real perfume, this was a homemade lifeline. Poor man's pomanders. But as you sit across from your friend, the real horror unfolds. She offers you a pair of perfumed gloves, pale blue, imported from France. They smell divine, cinnamon, orris root, rose oil. You thank her even as a quiet voice in your head warns you. Perfumed gloves, you see, are also rumored to carry death. Whispers abound that these gloves, often soaked in complex oils and chemicals, can be poisoned. One scratch, one absorbent touch, and you'll never wake up. Historians still debate whether these rumors of poisoned perfume were based on truth or pure paranoia. Some say assassins did indeed lace gloves and handkerchiefs with toxins. Others claim it was just fear born from a time when scent and danger shared the same vial. You slip the gloves on anyway. Of course you do. Because what's the alternative? Bare hands in a world of infection and filth? The gloves are soft. They hide the shaking. Later that day, as you pass a cathedral, you see a small funeral procession, a child. The air is heavy with incense, the church swinging thuribles so furiously the scent of frankincense and myrrh spills into the street like a holy smoke bomb. The priest believes it drives away the pestilence. Maybe it does. Or maybe it's just another mask in a city full of them. Perfume in this age becomes part of mourning. Bodies are washed in rose water. Coffins are lined with herbs. Corpses too far gone are simply drenched in perfume before burial or burning. There's a strange poetry to it, flowers trying to outshout rot, even in death. You walk home through this perfumed graveyard of a city. A few dabs of scent on your wrists, a splash across your chest, and you pretend you can't smell the truth beneath it all. Because that's the real trick of Renaissance perfume. It doesn't just mask decay, it lets you pretend it isn't there. You wake the next morning to the clanging of bells and the sour trace of last night's incense still clinging to your clothes. The gloves, still fragrant, still possibly cursed. You can't decide which worries you more, the scent or the silence now blanketing the canal below. You step outside, only to find the street thick with morning fog and something more pungent. You pass a nobleman with a glittering orb dangling from a chain at his belt. He's carrying a pomander just like yours, but his is absurdly ornate, gold filigree inlaid with tiny rubies, and from it leaks a scent so intense it curls your nose. You edge closer. The smell is sharp, spicy, borderline aggressive. You catch hints of clove, nutmeg, and a dense animalic undertone that almost makes you gag. The man, oblivious, keeps walking, swinging the orb like a censer. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. The Renaissance pomander wasn't just decorative. It was designed to pack a punch. Often filled with balls of wax or cloth soaked in a potent mix of herbs and animal extracts, it served as your mobile defense against disease and stink alike. But, and here's your quirky tidbit, some of these substances were so strong they did actual damage. Historical recipes often called for ingredients like camphor, benzoin resin, musk, and ambergris, many dissolved in alcohol or vinegar. These weren't gentle whiffs of floral delight, they were nose blasters, and in high concentrations they could irritate your mucous membranes, cause dizziness, or even temporarily dull your sense of smell altogether. You arrive at the apothecary, one of the few shops still open, and duck inside. Shelves line the walls, each bottle more mysterious than the last. You peer into one. A tar-like substance clings to the inside of the glass. "Civet paste," the apothecary murmurs, seeing your look. "Fresh from Ethiopia." You nod, trying not to look horrified. Civet, after all, comes from the anal glands of a small, very annoyed cat-like mammal, a prized scent fixative. As the apothecary rattles off more names, storax, labdanum, castoreum, you begin to realize something. Renaissance perfume isn't about pleasant smells, it's about powerful ones, smells that dominate, smells that overwhelm. You watch as another customer walks in, clearly wealthy. She demands a thick blend for her pomander, specifying nothing too delicate. The apothecary hands her a pot filled with something the color of molasses. She sniffs, nods, smiles. You, meanwhile, are blinking back tears. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Pomanders were so ubiquitous among the upper classes that they became status symbols. Many had compartments for multiple scented substances and were crafted by jewelers, not herbalists. Some opened like a blooming flower, each petal holding a different stench. The customer leaves, leaving behind a trail of clove and something that smells faintly like horse blanket. You glance at the apothecary, who shrugs. She'll thank me when she walks past the tanner's yard. Now comes the dark twist. The idea behind these powerful blends wasn't just to mask smells, it was to outcompete them, and in doing so they sometimes made people ill. Nosebleeds weren't uncommon, nausea frequent, and that ringing in your ears, probably too much camphor. Historians still argue whether these nose-numbing blends were genuinely protective or just another Renaissance placebo. Some claim the strong scents created a kind of psychological shield, convincing wearers they were safe. Others believe the constant olfactory assault may have dulled people's sensitivity, making them more vulnerable, not less. You leave the apothecary with a small brass tin of your own blend. You hesitate, then open it. A wall of scent hits you. Rose, yes, but with a deep, sweaty musk base that makes your eyes water. You close it quickly. Back in the street, you see a group of children running barefoot, laughing as they toss a bundle of lavender at each other like it's a toy. They're too young to understand the fear in the air, the war of smells their parents are silently fighting. But even they know. Lavender means safe. And as you walk past the butcher, the canal, and the pile of garbage now twice as high as it was yesterday, you realize something very modern about it all. This isn't perfume for beauty, it's perfume as dominance. It's a battle between rot and ritual. And you? You're just another soldier with a pomander for a sword. The scent of desperation is distilled drop by drop. Today you're inside a perfumer's shop, not the grand marble-clad kind visited by nobles, but a dim little workshop tucked between a fishmonger and a barber surgeon. The ceiling is low, the air is thick, syrupy with fragrance and smoke. You inhale and immediately regret it. Everything in here is both beautiful and slightly disgusting. Glass alembics bubble on a fire-fed still. Dried petals spill from open sacks, roses, violets, jasmine. But not all the ingredients are floral. One shelf holds jars of what look like tar, meat, and something that might be a mummified squirrel. Distilling scent in the Renaissance was half chemistry, half occult performance. You watch as the perfumer, an old man with fingers stained brown from resin, adds a lump of something chalky into boiling water. Calamus root, he says, sweet but tricky, too much and it turns bitter. He winks, like marriage. He's boiling petals today, trying to extract their essential oils through steam distillation. It's delicate, finicky work. Roses must be fresh. Violets collapse if the heat's too high. Musk, meanwhile, has to be soaked and dried for weeks before it's safe to use. Safe-ish. Here's your mainstream fact. The Renaissance marked the birth of modern perfumery, with techniques like distillation improving dramatically thanks to Arab and Persian influence. Alchemists in Islamic Spain had long mastered the extraction of essential oils using copper alembics and coiled condensers, technology that spread north into Italy and France. But the Renaissance perfumer wasn't just a craftsman, he was a bit of a mad scientist. You see it now as the man reaches for a bottle labeled Bitumenum Judaicum. He pours a single black drop into the distillate. Dead Sea tar, he says proudly, fixes the scent, smells like eternity. That's your quirky tidbit. Some of the materials they tried to distill for scent had no business being anywhere near a human skin. Bitumen, burnt horn, even powdered mummies, yes, actual ground-up Egyptian mummies, were all experimented with in the name of creating richer, longer-lasting perfumes. You try not to look horrified. There's a soft plop behind you. A young apprentice is trying to press the oil from jasmine flowers by hand. He's wrapped them in linen, crushed them between two stones, and now wrings them like a dishcloth over a silver dish. It takes thousands of flowers to make even a few drops. The boy's arms shake from the effort. You start to understand why perfume was so expensive. It wasn't just the ingredients, it was the labor. Someone had to pick the petals, soak the musks, stir the resins, and someone had to bottle it all without fainting from the smell. Historians still debate whether these early perfumers were scientists pushing forward chemistry or mystics playing with dangerous blends. Some argue they paved the way for modern pharmacology. Others suggest they were closer to snake oil salesmen with exceptionally good taste. The truth, as usual, floats somewhere between rosewater and mercury. A noblewoman enters the shop. The perfumer straightens his stained robe. She orders a blend, something floral, but with weight. He nods and reaches for a jar of deer musk. Real musk, you realize, extracted from a gland near a deer's navel. The smell is pungent, animal, almost obscene. He dilutes it in rosewater and alcohol, swirling it like a wine. He hands it to her. She sniffs, smiles, and places a small gold coin on the counter. Gone in a blink, her scent lingers like a footprint. You ask for something simple. He hands you a vial of orange blossom and bergamot, sweet, sharp, clean. You thank him and step outside. The moment the door closes, you're hit with the stench of the alley. Fish guts, urine, rot. The perfume you just bought seems to rise up like a shield, but you know what's in it now. You know what it took, and you're not entirely sure it smells better than death. just different. You've wandered from the perfumer's cramped shop and found yourself in a merchant's villa, an expansive place of carved columns, frescoed ceilings, and the pervasive aroma of wealth. A servant ushers you inside with gloved hands. You catch a whiff of his wrist as he passes, sweet, musky, almost creamy. Your host greets you with a bow, his collar ruffled and stiff, his smile practiced. He offers you wine, and as you raise the cup, it hits you, that same scent again, but stronger now, earthy, marine, with a trace of decay. You glance around, puzzled, and then your host gestures proudly to a silver box on his sideboard. Inside lies a waxy gray lump, rough around the edges, like a chunk of candle left in the sun too long. Ambergris, he says reverently, found washed ashore in the Balearics, a rare treasure. Ah, there it is, the whale vomit. Mainstream fact? Ambergris is a substance formed in the digestive tract of sperm whales. When the whale can't digest sharp squid beaks, it secretes a fatty resin to protect its insides. Sometimes it's vomited up. Sometimes it's expelled out the other end. Either way, it eventually floats on the sea, hardens in the sun, and, after months or years, transforms into a gray, waxy, sweet-smelling block worth more than its weight in gold. It's considered a miraculous fixative in perfume making. Without it, most Renaissance scents would fade in minutes. With it, they linger for days. You watch as your host scrapes the ambergris with a tiny gold knife. A pinch into alcohol, a swirl. He dabs it behind his ears like it's holy water. But here's your quirky tidbit. For centuries, people didn't agree on what ambergris actually was. Some believed it came from dragons. Others swore it was hardened sea foam. One medical text claimed it formed in the sea from a mixture of sun, salt, and sperm. That last one wasn't entirely wrong, but certainly uncomfortably phrased. You lean in for a closer smell. It's not unpleasant, earthy, leathery, with hints of tobacco and sea brine. It doesn't smell like whale intestines. But once you know what it is, it's hard to ignore. Your host insists on letting you try a few more fragrances from his collection. Here, he says, something French, ambergris and rose, aged 12 months in goatskin. You apply a dab to your pulse point and feel suddenly horribly aware of your pores. Historians still argue whether ambergris was always this prized, or if its value inflated during the height of Renaissance trade. Some sources suggest it was burned in religious rituals before it ever scented a glove. Others claim it was first used as medicine to cure epilepsy, nausea, and even impotence, long before perfumers caught wind of its staying power. As the afternoon wanes, the villa begins to warm with the sun. The walls seem to sweat perfume. That rose and ambergris blend on your wrist now smells like a spice market trapped in a library. Later, as you walk home, you pass a butcher with blood on his apron, humming as he salts a pig's cheek. You pause, a little disoriented. Is that ambergris again, or just your imagination? The scent has taken root in your memory now, poking through even the thickest alley stench. And that, you realize, is the magic and the dark truth of ambergris. Something expelled by a nauseated whale, bobbing in the ocean for months, touched by sunlight and time, has now wrapped itself around your senses like silk. It's perfume's great lie. The foulest beginnings often lead to the most intoxicating ends. The next evening, you find yourself in the candlelit boudoir of a duchess. Don't ask how. And the air is so thick with perfume it feels like walking through velvet soup. She beckons you in with a perfumed glove, her voice low and amused. The room glows with the golden shimmer of beeswax candles and the shimmer of something more primal. Musk. It clings to everything. The curtains, the cushions, her bodice, even the wine in your goblet carries a ghost of it, like it passed through the breath of something alive and half wild. You sit, trying not to choke politely, and attempt to parse the source of the overwhelming aroma. Then she shows you a tiny silver box shaped like a snail. Inside, civet paste. It glistens like brown butter, pungent beyond belief. You lean in, curious, and recoil instantly. The smell is feral, almost fecal, definitely something from the wrong end of an animal. Quirky tidbit? That's because civet paste comes directly from the perineal glands of the civet cat, a twitchy, fox-like nocturnal creature native to Africa and Asia. The Renaissance perfumers prized its musk for its fixative properties. The stronger the stench, the more it anchored lighter scents like rose and violet. But before it gets diluted into something wearable, civet smells, well, intimate. And yet, here it is, dabbed behind ears, rubbed into gloves, stirred into oils. In noble circles, this wasn't just accepted, it was fashionable. Musk equaled magnetism, the more animalic, the more seductive, and sweat, not something to erase, but something to blend. That's your mainstream fact. Renaissance perfumers intentionally mixed floral oils with natural body odors. Scents weren't meant to cover human smells, they were meant to enhance them. A noblewoman might go days without bathing, but her neck would shimmer with civet rose oil, marrying flesh to flower. The Duchess dabs a bit of the civet paste onto her wrist and leans in, eyes glinting. "It only smells foul to the innocent," she says. "To everyone else, it's delicious." You don't know whether to nod or run. Historians still argue whether the erotic use of musk and civet in the Renaissance was practical or symbolic. Some claim it was a tactical choice, to attract lovers or show off wealth. Others believe it was about dominance. Those who could afford such animal products could also afford the stench of indulgence. Scent as status, as seduction, as power. You excuse yourself to the open balcony, gasping for air. The breeze offers some relief, but it's no escape. Even out here, the civet follows you, tangled in your cloak, ghosting your breath. A maid steps out beside you, younger, her dress plain. She offers you a small cloth scented with something lighter, lavender and a touch of bergamot. "Better?" she whispers. You nod, grateful. And then she chuckles. The civet doesn't bother her, she was raised on it. You look back into the boudoir, where the Duchess is now retouching her cheeks with a rose-tinted balm. The candles glow brighter. The room itself seems to pulse with fragrance, as if scent has replaced air entirely. In this world, perfume is more than smell. It's identity. Your musk says more about your station than your coat of arms. You wonder how many other nobles smell like jungle cats and flower gardens. You wonder how many bedchambers are coated in secretions of frightened animals and crushed petals. And then you wonder, because you can't help it, whether you're starting to like the smell. Just a little. That's the danger, after all. The human nose adapts. The shocking becomes tolerable. The tolerable becomes desirable. And before you know it, you're leaning in, asking for another dab of something that came from beneath a civet's tail. Perfume is persuasive like that. It doesn't just linger, it seduces. You've left the Duchess's boudoir behind, though the civet clings to your clothing like a stubborn ghost. And now you're headed to court. Not just any court, her court, Queen Elizabeth's, the Virgin Queen herself. The air in the great hall doesn't reek like the streets of London or the canals of Venice. No, here the scent is curated, controlled, regal. You catch hints of rosewater, orange blossom, perhaps a whiff of cinnamon, the smell of power, the smell of myth. And there she is, Queen Elizabeth I, sitting beneath a golden canopy, her red wig towering, her pale face dusted to the point of luminescence. But it's the aroma that strikes you first. She smells, quite frankly, divine. a blend of rose oil, lavender, and perhaps, just faintly, something medicinal, almost metallic. You soon learn that Elizabeth didn't just wear perfume, she weaponized it. Her wardrobe included dozens of scented items, gloves steeped in aromatic oils, pomanders sewn into her gowns, handkerchiefs laced with neroli. Even her letters were perfumed, roses pressed into wax, lavender tucked into folds. Mainstream fact? Queen Elizabeth was famously scent-obsessed. She owned hundreds of pairs of perfumed gloves, many gifted by ambassadors or suitors. These gloves weren't just accessories, they were messages, tokens, warnings. Scent became her signature, an invisible crown. You're handed a pair yourself. Soft leather, tinted cream, perfumed with orris root and a whisper of clove. They smell expensive, but they also smell dangerous. And here's your quirky tidbit. The Queen was so known for her scented gloves that rumors began to swirl. Were these gifts safe or laced with poison? One particularly enduring tale suggests a pair of gloves intended for her was intercepted just in time, doused, it was said, in a fragrance so deadly that one touch would end her reign. No one could prove it, of course, but the fear lingered like cheap musk. You glance around the court. It's clear. Everyone here smells like something. A nobleman passes trailing sage and myrrh. A young lady's perfume is so sweet it's nearly cloying, like honey gone too long in the sun. Even the guards carry sachets at their belts to keep the bad airs at bay. But it's the Queen who commands the olfactory spotlight. One servant walks past carrying a silver basin filled with rose water for hand washing. Another waves a fan spritzed with neroli across the monarch's face. Everything is scent. Everything is presentation. Historians still argue whether Elizabeth's perfume use was a health precaution, a royal vanity, or a political calculation. Some believe she genuinely feared the miasmas of plague. Others think she used perfume to maintain her image as divine and untouchable, clean, pure, ethereal. After all, in an era where bathing was rare and rot common, smelling like a garden made you seem more angel than woman. The Queen turns her gaze your way. For a moment you wonder if she can smell your doubt, your curiosity, your lingering Duchess civet funk. You bow deeply, and you realize, in this court, to smell wrong is to be wrong. Later you pass through her private chambers, don't ask how, and see shelves lined with bottles, some elegant Venetian glass, others plain clay, each one carefully labeled, rose attar, sandalwood tincture, frankincense infusion. There's even a small sealed vial labeled Italy, unopened. You can't help but wonder what that one does. It's almost a laboratory. Almost a chapel, because here, perfume is more than pleasure. It's ritual, it's armor, it's diplomacy. You leave the palace trailing rose and sandalwood, already half drunk on the memory of her scent, and though the city outside smells like horse sweat and frying eels, you hold the handkerchief to your face and pretend, for one more moment, that you're still in her presence, because that's what good perfume does. It haunts you. You make your way back into the bustling heart of London, still clinging to that perfumed handkerchief from Elizabeth's court like it's a holy relic. But within moments of stepping into the street, the illusion breaks. The city grabs your nose by the collar and shakes it awake. The smell is everything. Roasting meat and horse droppings, candle wax and body odor, tallow soap if you're lucky, urine, always. You duck under a market stall as a fishmonger flings yesterday's catch, now more bones than flesh, into the gutter. It slaps the cobblestones with a wet squelch, and the scent that rises is enough to peel paint. And yet, people around you barely flinch. Why? Because they're armed, not with swords, but with scent. The great smell cover-up is in full effect. You pass a portly magistrate dabbing cologne onto his neck from a silver flask. A merchant woman fans herself with a lavender-spritzed cloth. Even the street beggar wears a waxy cone of herbs tied to a ribbon around his neck. Perfume here isn't about attraction or refinement. It's about denial. You're not just covering smell. You're erasing a reality no one wants to face. Mainstream fact. In the Renaissance, personal hygiene was limited, and full-body bathing was rare and often considered dangerous to health. Scented oils, pomades, and perfumes weren't luxury items. They were substitutes for soap and water. People literally cleaned themselves by smelling better. But here's where it gets darker. You spot a young nobleman exiting a coach. His ruffled cuffs flutter as he moves, and with each step he trails a cloud of violet and orange blossom. His boots are pristine, his hair gleams, he smells divine. But when he raises his arms to adjust his collar, you catch a glimpse beneath the velvet. Under his sleeves, raw skin, red patches, some weeping slightly. You know that look. It's the mark of too much perfume, applied daily, maybe hourly, oils soaking into open pores, alcohol burning flesh. Some perfumes were so strong they caused contact dermatitis, and the wealthy often wore them anyway. Better to itch and glow than stink and blend in. Quirky tidbit? Some people in the upper classes grew so attached to their favorite perfume that they developed full-body sensitivities. There are letters from courtiers begging their physicians not to take away their musk-soaked gloves or their rosemary spritz, despite severe rashes. One woman even claimed her perfume made her weep from the eyes but not the soul. Poetic, also deeply concerning. You stop at a barber surgeon's stall. He's offering medicated colognes, little more than alcohol with crushed herbs, but they're selling fast. One man sprinkles his entire hat with it and strides away like he's invincible. You step back and take it all in. Perfume as distraction. Perfume as protection. Perfume as performance. Even the city buildings seem to participate. Churches burn incense constantly, trying to mask the scent of unwashed worshippers. Theaters pump spiced oils into the crowd between acts. Bakeries throw sprigs of thyme into the oven with the bread, just to keep the flies away. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance obsession with perfuming every surface was rooted in actual medical belief or mass olfactory delusion. Some say people truly believed scent protected them from disease. Others think it was simply the only way to live through the smellscape of urban life without going mad. You walk on, through the market, past the candle shop, into a tailor's boutique where the air is thick with cedar and starch. The tailor offers you a cape, lined with silk and gently infused with white musk. You try it on. It fits. You sniff. It doesn't smell like the alley anymore. It smells like forgetting. That's what the great cover-up really is, isn't it? Not just hiding bad smells, but hiding the truth beneath them. The plague, the sweat, the unwashed sins. Perfume isn't just a mask. It's a lie we all agree to believe. And for now, wrapped in musk and velvet, you believe it too. The next day, you find yourself further from the safety of courtly perfumes, down cobbled alleys where the scent of power begins to mingle with something older, something more dangerous. You're outside a modest apothecary near a riverbank in Milan. The sign above the door creaks in the wind. A crow stares at you from a rooftop, unmoving. You step inside. The air smells not of lavender or rose, but something darker. Anise, mold, iron. Bottles line the shelves, labeled in Latin and something scratchier, older. You notice a curious display in the corner. Vials of perfume, yes, but with names that make your skin prickle. Nightshade musk, lily of the grave, venefica. The old woman behind the counter smiles without warmth. She offers you a sniff of something she calls essence of faith. It smells faintly of incense and wine-soaked wood, a church scent if the church were buried. And then she leans in and says something that lands like cold water on your spine. Scent and sorcery are twins, you know. One charms, the other curses. The line is thin. Mainstream fact? In the Renaissance, perfume wasn't just associated with beauty. It shared shelves with poison. The line between apothecary and perfumer was razor thin. Both worked with distillates, both understood dosage, and both, with the right materials, could kill. That's why you're suddenly uneasy. That's why every bottle here feels like a dare, because back then to smell too good was to risk suspicion, especially if you were a woman, especially if you were foreign, or unmarried, or simply too clever. You step back toward the door, and your hand brushes a thick leather-bound book. It falls open to a page featuring a familiar shape, a pomander orb, identical to the one hanging from your belt. Only this one is labeled Spiritus Infernus. A recipe follows, in ink stained with what might be blood. Quirky tidbit? Some surviving Renaissance grimoires do, in fact, include perfumes meant not for seduction, but for summoning. Blends of myrrh, civet, and storax were believed to open spiritual portals, attract familiars, or manipulate dreams. The phrase perfume of Mars often signaled a blend intended to provoke aggression or lust. You exit the shop into the daylight, clutching your sleeve where the witchy scent still lingers. Across the street, a crowd has gathered around a woman being dragged from her home. She's shouting something in dialect, holding a rosary, tears cutting lines down her soot-smudged cheeks. Someone whispers, "She scented the priest's clothes, then he got sick." The word strega, witch, flickers through the air like a match. Historians still argue whether perfume's link to witchcraft was based on real fears or convenient scapegoating. After all, women skilled in scent-making often lived on the fringes of society, midwives, herbalists, foreign widows. And scent, being invisible yet powerful, made for the perfect tool of suspicion. The church didn't help matters. Incense was sacred, unless it wasn't. Perfume was divine, until it wasn't. Smelling too nice, especially without noble pedigree, could imply seduction, manipulation, even spiritual corruption. You turn a corner, heart still thudding. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafts out of a bakery, and for a moment you're lulled by the comfort of it. But even here, a small pot of rosemary and clove sits beside the oven, not for seasoning but to purify the air. You're beginning to see it everywhere. The duality, the perfume that charms or condemns. Back at your inn that night, you inspect the little vial you purchased earlier. Just a few drops of violet and labdanum. Lovely, innocent. But as you unstopper it, a strange thought crosses your mind. If you left this on someone's pillow, what would they think? A gift, a warning. And that's the point. In the Renaissance, scent wasn't neutral. It never was. It was always an act, a spell, a seduction, or sometimes a trap. The next morning you take a carriage south toward the rolling hills and lavender-draped fields of Grasse. But this isn't the postcard version. There are no dreamy walks among flower beds, no soft violin music playing over golden hills. Instead, as you approach the town, you're hit by a different kind of bouquet, something halfway between floral and feral. Welcome to the world capital of perfume, but not the perfumed world you're used to. Grasse in the Renaissance is still clawing its way out of its tanner roots, quite literally. This town didn't start with flowers. It started with skins. The tanning of animal hides is a messy, smelly business. To make leather soft and usable, it has to be soaked in a mix of lime, water, dung, and animal brains. It's as appealing as it sounds. You pass by open vats filled with beige sludge and blackened hides hanging like sad flags on the line. The smell could knock a seagull out of the sky. Mainstream fact? Grass only began shifting from leather tanning to perfumery in the 16th century, when local artisans discovered that scenting gloves with floral oils made them vastly more marketable and tolerable. Thus was born the glove perfumer, a new class of craftsmen who stitched leather and brewed fragrance in the same breath. You're led down to one of the early perfume workshops, where the dividing line between elegance and squalor is alarmingly thin. Inside, peasant women, many barefoot, stand ankle-deep in vats of crushed jasmine and orange blossoms, stomping like they're treading grapes. The flowers are fresh, yes, but the floors are not. Goats roam the courtyard. Dogs sleep beside piles of animal fat. One woman hands you a linen cloth soaked in enfleurage paste, animal fat that's been used to capture the scent of petals over several days. She tells you to sniff. You do, and it's glorious, pure tuberose, honeyed and soft. But then she shows you the process. After saturation, the fat is scraped off by hand and washed in alcohol, over and over. The hands doing that scraping, raw, cracked, unwashed. Quirky tidbit? Before enfleurage became refined, some workshops in Grasse simply reused the same fat multiple times, making the end result, however fragrant, a stew of sweat, bacteria, and flower essence. Romantic, no? Outside, you spot a cart carrying bundles of harvested flowers, rose, lavender, narcissus. They look like wedding offerings, but they're destined for labor, not ritual, not romance. And the people working these fields, mostly women, poorly paid and often exposed to the very chemicals used to preserve their products. Historians still debate whether the sweet rise of Grasse's perfume industry truly elevated the region or just replaced one pungent trade with another. Some praise its innovation, its early grasp of scent extraction. Others point to the long, ugly overlap with leather and the toll it took on the poor. As you walk through the streets, you realize how tightly the luxury of perfume clings to the grimy labor beneath it. There is beauty here, sure. There's also blood and dung under every blossom. Later, in a small tavern, a merchant offers you a vial of Grasse's finest. You open it, jasmine and sandalwood, smooth and calming. But your nose, now too educated, twitches. You catch the edge of something else. Fat, leather, even a hint of barnyard. You cap it quickly, and yet you don't reject it. You pocket the vial and sip your wine, glancing out at the hills of flowers where young girls are still picking petals by the fistful, because now you understand. Even paradise has a smell. And in Grasse, it's never just blossoms on the breeze. It's blossoms on a bed of hides. The next morning you wake with a headache that smells suspiciously like last night's jasmine and goat fat cocktail. You splash your face with lavender water, but it clings, something earthy, sour, almost animal. You sigh and open the window to let in fresh air. Unfortunately, fresh in Renaissance Europe is more of an aspiration than a reality. Today you're headed not to a noble court or an artisan shop, but to the source, the literal source, the base notes, the foundations of fragrance. And it stinks. A mule cart rattles by, overloaded with sacks of raw materials for the local perfumery. You follow it, drawn by a mix of curiosity and a scent that can only be described as dung adjacent. Eventually, you arrive at a small processing house just outside the town. It looks like a barn. It smells like a barn. That's probably because it was a barn, and arguably still is. Inside, workers are boiling what looks like tar in a large iron cauldron. The perfumer in charge welcomes you with a smile far too wide for the current atmosphere. "Come, come," he says, "let me show you how we build the soul of a perfume." You peer into one of the barrels and nearly fall back. The substance is thick, greasy, and deeply brown. He scoops some into a jar and holds it out for you to sniff. You hesitate. He grins. It's fecal, but elegant, no?
Quirky tidbit? He's not joking. In the Renaissance, base notes were often derived from substances most people would never associate with luxury. Civet paste, castoreum from beaver glands, and yes, even excrement-rich components like hyraceum, fossilized animal waste from hyraxes, were used to provide longevity and depth to perfumes. These animalic notes were described as sensual, earthy, or, if you're a little more honest, filthy. And here's your mainstream fact. These ingredients weren't just tolerated, they were coveted. Castoreum, for instance, was used in both perfumery and medicine, believed to stimulate the brain and even function as a mild aphrodisiac. It was scraped from beaver scent glands, dried, and often steeped in alcohol for weeks before being blended with floral oils. As the perfumer stirs the bubbling mixture, you notice a recipe scrawled on parchment nailed to the wall. Rose oil, civet, musk, sandalwood, ambergris. The king's own blend, he says proudly. You must build it from the bottom up. Without the base, the scent flies away. Historians still argue whether this reliance on animalic base notes was purely practical or part of a deeper philosophical approach to scent. Some believe perfumers saw these earthy ingredients as essential to grounding the ephemeral beauty of flowers. Others say it was simply economic. Animal products were abundant, long-lasting, and hard to fake. You wander further into the room. A worker is skimming fat from a shallow pan. Goose grease, she says without looking up. Good for enfleurage, bad for summer. You peer around. On one table, dried excretions from a civet lie beside powdered iris root. On another, a copper distiller bubbles with a dark, sticky resin. You realize that for all the elegance perfume might suggest when bottled, its birth is often muddy, bloody, and intimate. You sit on a bench, watching it all. The heat, the stink, the beauty struggling to rise out of muck. The perfumer hands you a cloth to wipe your brow. It smells faintly of rose, but beneath it, just barely, is that animalic whisper again. And you start to understand something strange. These base notes work not in spite of their origin, but because of it. They add a rawness, a pulse, a shadow. Without them, perfume is just petals. With them, it's something human. As you walk away, your clothes saturated with the ghost of beaver musk and ambergris, you no longer wrinkle your nose. You breathe it in, deeply, because you've seen what lies at the bottom of the bottle. And it's not rot. Not really. It's realism. You return to the city by dusk, but something feels different this time. The streets are unusually still. Doors are barred, windows shuttered. Somewhere nearby a bell tolls, not for prayer, but for the dead. Another outbreak. You should be afraid. You are. But mostly, you're curious. Because today you've arranged something strange. A visit to one of the plague doctors. Not just any, but a famed physician with a reputation for wearing more scent than sense. You're led into a cramped study lit by flickering candles and choked with the scent of burnt herbs. There, hunched over a scroll, sits the doctor, clad in the iconic garb, long black robes, gloves, and that eerie beaked mask. He turns, slowly. The beak points directly at you. You freeze. He offers a low, gravelly, "Welcome," distorted slightly by the leather snout, and then he gestures for you to come closer. The mask, you now realize, is more than costume. It's a survival tool, a low-tech air filter. The beak isn't empty, it's stuffed full of scent. Mainstream fact? The plague doctor's mask, as worn in 17th century Europe and inspired by earlier Renaissance prototypes, was designed with a beak filled with aromatic substances. The belief was simple: bad smells, miasma, caused disease. So by filling the nose with strong, pleasant aromas, one could fend off illness. You peer into a nearby jar of the mask's stuffing.
Dried rose petals, cinnamon, mint, cloves, and yes, scraps of camphor and dried orange peel. It smells like a tea blend made by someone halfway through a panic attack. Quirky tidbit? Some plague masks also contained oddities like vinegar-soaked sponges, crushed emeralds, or even dried toads. The idea was less about science and more about symbolic medicine. Ward off evil, block death, smell better while doing it. The doctor lifts a small pouch from his table. Inside is a blend he calls Four Thieves Vinegar, a recipe rumored to have been created by a gang of corpse robbers who never caught the plague. Garlic, lavender, sage, rosemary, he mutters, dabbing some onto his gloves. It keeps the bad spirits away. You nod, politely. Historians still argue whether plague doctors actually believed in their aromatic defenses or simply clung to them out of desperation. Some accounts suggest the masks were more for psychological comfort than genuine protection. Others point out that many plague doctors died anyway, scented or not. He shows you a collection of plague remedies, most involving scent, burning juniper in rooms, boiling vinegar on stoves, even painting walls with mixtures of turpentine and lavender oil. One involves tying a sachet of marjoram and cloves around the neck of a chicken and letting it draw the poison from your skin. You decline to try that one. You step back out into the street. The air is heavier now, fewer people, more silence. You pass a priest, swinging a censer so wildly it looks like he's trying to punch death in the face with frankincense. The scent is thick and oily, clinging to your cloak like resin. At a nearby home, a servant stands outside fanning the doorway with a cloth soaked in rose vinegar. Her master, she tells you, is sick. Inside, they've hung herbs from the rafters, basil, bay leaves, mint, all tied with red string. The room smells like a confused salad, but it isn't working. The scent cannot keep out death. And yet, everyone clings to it, because what else is there? You walk past a pile of rags left at a doorstep, someone's clothing, perfumed just barely with lavender. Maybe it belonged to someone trying to leave a little sweetness behind. Maybe they thought it would protect them. Maybe they simply wanted to smell something other than despair. You pause, close your eyes, inhale, and for a moment you understand. Scent won't save you. But in a world where the air is treacherous, where silence means loss, and where death is always lurking just a step behind, it's the only comfort you have left. You're back in Florence now, walking through the cloisters of a crumbling abbey, where even the stone seems to sigh with incense. The quiet is thick, broken only by the rustle of robes and the occasional click of sandals on ancient floors. The scent in the air is unexpected, floral, sweet, even, radiant. And then you find it, a body. Not a fresh one, thankfully. This saint has been dead for decades, centuries even, but her skin is intact, her cheeks gently pink, and the room where she lies smells like lilies. No visible decay, no rot, just the scent of peace. Mainstream fact? In Catholic tradition, certain saints are said to be incorruptible. Their bodies resist decay long after death, sometimes emitting a sweet or floral scent known as the odor of sanctity. It's often taken as divine proof of holiness. But here's the twist. You glance down at a box tucked discreetly near the altar. Not a reliquary, a perfume kit. Vials, scented cloth, even a bottle labeled Oil of St. Veronica. The monk beside you leans in. Pilgrims like the scent, he says, makes them feel closer to God. You raise an eyebrow, he shrugs, so we help it along. Quirky tidbit? During the Renaissance, some religious institutions enhanced the supposed odor of sanctity with perfume. Relics and remains were sometimes discreetly treated with rosewater, myrrh, or even civet to maintain a holy aroma and attract pilgrims and their donations. You step closer to the saint's preserved body. The air is floral, yes, but also musky, earthy, familiar. You can't help but wonder how much of the scent is miracle and how much is musk. You move through the halls of the monastery, guided by a young novice who gestures reverently at caskets and reliquaries. She smelled of violets, he says of one saint. He smelled like balsam. You glance at a small altar where a cloth draped in lilies hides something darker beneath. Historians still argue whether incorruptibility is truly supernatural or simply the result of environmental conditions, dry climates, embalming techniques, or intentional preservation. But the scent? That's even murkier. Was it naturally produced by the corpse, or added quietly by the devout, hoping to inspire faith and perhaps a little profit? You sit in the chapel for a moment, letting the scent settle. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also strategic. Religion in this era, like perfume, is a sensory experience. The glow of candles, the chant of monks, the taste of wine, and the smell, the smell, that's what lingers. The church understands what perfumers have always known. People will follow what they can smell. You exit into the herb garden, sunlight dusting the air with lavender and mint. A nun tends the plants gently, humming. You ask her what they're for. Holy water, burial rites, scents for saints, she says, and sometimes just to make the hallway less depressing. You nod. Fair. You realize then, perfume isn't just about masking the foul. It's about manufacturing presence. Whether saintly or seductive, it gives shape to the invisible. It tells you who was here, or who wants to be remembered. Before you leave, the monk offers you a cloth, lightly scented with something he calls miraculous balm. You press it to your nose. It smells like lilies, and something else. Rose. And just the faintest trace of musk. You tuck it into your coat and walk out, unsure whether you've just been blessed or brilliantly marketed to. But the scent lingers, and that's the point. You stroll through a market square just outside Florence, and for once you're not assaulted by the usual chaotic orchestra of smells. No fresh dung, no boiling tripe, no overripe fruit fermenting on cobblestones. Instead, the air feels stratified, layered, like scent itself has learned the art of class distinction. At the center of the square, near a fountain whose water smells faintly of iron and lilies, a nobleman strides past in a plume of sandalwood and bergamot. People part for him like he's Moses with a cologne bottle. A few moments later, a washerwoman hurries by, her skirt hitched, the acrid tang of lye and onions clinging to her. No one moves for her. And just like that, the scent of class difference hits you full in the face. Mainstream fact? In Renaissance Europe, scent became a powerful marker of social hierarchy. The rich could afford imported spices, rare flower distillates, and exotic animal fixatives. The poor, they smelled of their work, sweat, soil, and whatever cheap, harsh soap they could make or barter for. It wasn't just about perfume. It was about access. The noble classes weren't cleaner, they were better scented. And society rewarded that. You pass a perfume stall brimming with vials labeled with names like Heaven's Kiss, Queen's Mercy, and Velvet Wrath. You reach for one, only to have the vendor gently reposition your hand toward the shelf labeled Cologne for Servants. Harsher blends, heavier on vinegar, no ambergris in sight. You glance back. The noble shelf glistens. Quirky tidbit? Some Renaissance cities like Paris and Venice issued sumptuary laws not just about clothing, but about scented accessories. Certain perfumes were reserved for the upper class, and it was illegal for commoners to wear them. Violators could be fined, or worse, accused of impersonation or seduction. You duck into a side alley where a group of laundrywomen are scrubbing linens in a basin of soapwort and rainwater. One of them adds a sprig of rosemary. Makes it smell richer, she says with a smirk. The lady upstairs thinks we use rose water. You laugh, but there's something bitter in it. Historians still debate whether perfume truly separated classes, or whether the obsession with scent merely highlighted inequalities that already existed. Was it about luxury or control? Some argue that perfume became a tool of social policing. You could literally sniff out someone who didn't belong. Later, at a dinner hosted by a middling merchant family, you notice how carefully the household balances its scent. The wine is cheap, the food plain, but the napkins are steeped in lavender, the host's tunic faintly musk-scented. You realize they're trying to rise through their noses. And then you overhear a conversation. A guest, well-dressed, heavily perfumed, remarks on a girl in the kitchen. "Smells like garlic and wet wool," he scoffs. "Can't be from a good family." No one laughs. They just nod, as if scent were all the evidence needed. You excuse yourself and step outside, suddenly aware of your own aroma. You're wearing noble rose oil, but still bear the earthy ghost of that tannery, the ghost of civet, of musk, of saints and sweat and laborers. You smell like everyone and no one. And maybe that's what makes people nervous, because in this world, if you smell wrong, you might be poor. If you smell too right, you might be pretending. Either way, someone's watching your scent like it's a passport. You've made your way back into Venice, where the air tastes like the sea and secrets float heavier than mist. You walk along the Rialto, past apothecaries and spice stalls, until you reach a quiet canal where a man with no sign hangs above his door sells the most coveted perfumes in the city. Inside, it's dim. Shelves line the walls, but the labels are vague. Water of Venus, moonstone breath, elixir of the galleon. Everything is hand-blown glass, wax-sealed, and terrifyingly expensive. You request something light, maybe a simple citrus blend. The merchant nods and produces a bottle, but before he opens it, he pauses. "Do you know what's in this?" he asks, tilting the vial. "No?" He smiles. Neither does anyone else. Mainstream fact? The Renaissance perfume market was completely unregulated. There were no ingredient disclosures, no purity standards, no safety testing. A bottle labeled rose water might be 1 part rose and 9 parts turpentine, or worse, lead acetate, which added shine and extended shelf life at the small cost of, poisoning. You take a cautious sniff. It's sharp, metallic, strangely sweet, not quite citrus. "Bit of white lead to stabilize it," he says casually, very fashionable among courtiers. You pull your nose back, eyes stinging. He offers another blend, less harsh, more floral, but you now eye each bottle like it might explode. And here's your quirky tidbit. In some circles, especially among wealthier women, perfumes doubled as light cosmetics and skin treatments. Pearl water, for example, contained real ground pearls, alongside corrosive white lead and mercury salts. It shimmered, yes, until it burned through the skin. You spot a tray of soap bars, rose-shaped, wrapped in silk. "Scented with crushed violets," he says, "but the soft sheen gives them away. They're loaded with arsenic. Better lather at your own risk." Historians still argue whether perfumers of the day were fully aware of how dangerous their concoctions were. Some say they were simply following inherited recipes, passed down through guilds and master-apprentice systems, without questioning the side effects. Others insist they knew, but didn't care. Beauty and status always outweighed risk. You leave the shop with a small sachet of dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, and orange peel. Safe, probably. But even that makes you uneasy now, because in this era, the most dangerous thing isn't what you can see, it's what you can. Later that evening, you visit a Venetian salon. The women glitter with jewels, their gowns perfumed, their cheeks slightly flushed, some from wine, some perhaps from mercury-based beauty waters. They dab scent onto handkerchiefs, into their hair, behind their knees. You smell cinnamon, rose, and something smoky. Then someone faints. No one panics. She's revived with a splash of reviving water, a pungent blend of vinegar and camphor. You catch a hint of sulfur beneath it and wonder quietly if her collapse was from hunger, nerves, or long-term mercury exposure. The hostess waves it off, laughing. Too much musk in politics, she says. You don't laugh, because perfume here isn't just fashion. It's risk, it's performance, it's poison wrapped in petals. And the scariest part? You can't tell the difference. You're in Florence again, seated in a candlelit parlor among silk cushions and watchful eyes. The scent in the room is exotic, myrrh and jasmine perhaps, but under it lurks something darker, something metallic, like the scent of cold coins or freshly sharpened tools. You've been invited to an evening gathering of society elites, where gossip flows more freely than wine, and everyone's perfume is louder than their laughter. You're halfway through a glass of sweet vermouth when your host, an aging aristocrat with eyes like dull mirrors, leans in and tells a story about a gift. A small bottle of imported scent given in friendship, shared in trust. A delicate dab behind the ears, on the wrists, and then sudden decline, fever, convulsions, death. Poison, he whispers, hidden in the perfume. Only the expensive ones are worth the trouble, he adds, lifting his glass. You wonder if that was a compliment. Mainstream fact? During the Renaissance, poison was the silent killer of choice in many noble circles. It was discreet, untraceable, and often delivered through gifts, jewelry, gloves, cosmetics, and yes, perfume. Scent bottles made perfect vessels, beautiful, aromatic, and easily manipulated. You sip your wine, uneasily aware that the vial in your coat pocket smells very much like the one he just described. Quirky tidbit? The notorious Borgia family, yes, those Borgias, were rumored to have used perfumed poisons in their political dealings. A particular blend, dubbed aqua tofana, was said to smell faintly of herbs and almonds, and could be applied to skin or drizzled into wine. Historians debate its exact formula, and whether it ever truly existed, but the fear was real. So was the paranoia. You notice it now. The way guests lift perfume bottles with gloves, how they sniff cautiously before dabbing, how one woman subtly wipes her neck with a lemon peel after applying a new scent, just in case. Historians still argue whether perfume was a favored weapon of political assassins or simply a scapegoat for sudden deaths in a medically clueless era. Some claim it was mostly legend, fueled by intrigue and fear. Others point to surviving poison rings, hollow combs, and laced gloves as hard evidence that death often came with a pleasant aroma. As the evening drifts on, conversation turns to inheritance, sudden illness, and accidents. You excuse yourself. The air is too thick now, not just with perfume, but with implication. You walk the streets of Florence alone. A breeze carries the faint trace of neroli and vinegar. Someone, somewhere, is preparing for another masked event. You think of the anonymous vials being passed, the bottles exchanged like dangerous secrets. Perfume, you now realize, is the perfect assassin. It hides in plain sight. It flatters, it seduces, it vanishes, and it leaves behind only questions, and perhaps a faint trail of roses. Back at your inn, you examine your own collection. Bottles from Venice, Grasse, Paris. One of them, just one, you can't remember where you got. You unstopper it. Inhale, sweet, herbal, and underneath it, almonds. You stop, cork it, set it aside, and decide for once to sleep unscented, just in case. The days stretch longer now, as you travel deeper into the countryside. You've left the city behind, but even here, in the rolling hills dotted with olive groves and vine-covered cottages, the smell of the past lingers. The world of perfumed courts and dangerous concoctions seems far away, but its scent is still with you, like an uninvited guest at the table, never quite leaving. You stop at a small village, its stone walls laced with ivy and its air heavy with the scent of drying herbs. You find yourself in the garden of a humble herbalist, a woman whose hands are calloused from years of working the land. Her wares aren't for luxury, they're for survival. Lavender, rosemary, thyme, sage. The herbs smell fresh, but more importantly, they smell real. You can tell these leaves have been crushed by hands that know them, that understand them. She invites you to sit, offering a cup of herbal tea. It's nothing like the perfumed concoctions of the noble courts, but it's soothing. Its scent is pure, untainted by any foreign oils or dangerous additives. The simple smell of a plant that's been touched by the sun. Perfume, in the city, it's like a mask, she says as you sip the tea, her voice low and steady. But out here, it's what keeps us alive. These herbs, these flowers, they have meaning, they have purpose. Scent isn't always about hiding, sometimes it's about healing. Mainstream fact? Herbs have been used for medicinal purposes for thousands of years, and many of the same plants that were used to create perfumes were also used to treat ailments, from digestive issues to respiratory problems. Lavender, rosemary, and thyme were staples in Renaissance apothecaries, prized for their therapeutic qualities. In fact, many of the same plants used in Renaissance perfumes were believed to ward off disease. An irony considering their role in a world obsessed with scent as status and luxury. But here's the quirky tidbit. One of the most famous Renaissance cures was the so-called herb of grace, an infusion of rosemary, sage, and thyme, believed to protect against the plague. Some even wore it around their necks in little pouches, just as they did with perfume, under the mistaken belief that the herbs would ward off the miasma, the foul air that carried disease. As you sit in the herbalist's garden, surrounded by the real, raw smell of these plants, you begin to realize something profound. Scent, when it's pure, isn't a tool of deception. It's a reflection of nature itself, raw and unrefined. It's the smell of life, not death, not luxury, not control, just life. The herbalist hands you a small sachet filled with dried lavender and rosemary. Take this, she says, for sleep, for peace. Not everything in this world needs to be masked. You leave the village later that day with the sachet in your pocket, its scent grounding you in a way that the perfumes of court never could. It's simple, fresh, real. You've forgotten how comforting something so pure can be. As the evening sun sinks lower, you realize something that had been bothering you for days. You're tired of the layers of perfume, tired of the layers of pretense, of politics, of danger. You're tired of masks, and for the first time in a long time, you breathe deeply. Just air. No rose, no musk, no camphor. Just the scent of the world as it was meant to be. The road ahead leads you through forgotten fields, past crumbling stone walls where wildflowers now claim dominion. The city feels distant, its smoky canals, perfumed courts, and courtly intrigues as far removed from you as any dream. Yet even here, in this quiet place where the air is sweet with nature's breath, the past is never truly gone. The world of perfumes, poisons, and power still lingers like a shadow at your heels. You arrive in a town, small, humble, with a market square where the scent of bread and honey fills the air. Here people smell of the earth and of work, of simple living. No one is adorned in elaborate fragrance. No perfumes are passed around like secrets. Instead, the air is filled with the honest, familiar sense of everyday life. Chickens scratching at the dirt, fresh cut wood, the faintest trace of something herbal from the stall of a local healer. You sit at a table outside a cafe, sipping a simple coffee, and watch the townspeople go about their business. The world feels still, grounded in a way you haven't experienced in a long time. The smells of life are here, raw and unrefined, and they make you realize something you've long overlooked. In a world obsessed with scent, we sometimes forget to simply be. It's only then, after walking through so many perfumed halls, through kitchens laced with herbs, through courts wrapped in secrecy, that you begin to understand. Perfume isn't just about the beauty or the danger of scent. It's a tool of identity, a way of claiming space, of asserting who you are, what you want, and how you wish to be remembered. But in this small town, in the midst of the day's work, there is no need for perfume. There is no need for artifice. The people here wear the scent of their labor, their land, their daily lives, and somehow, that's enough. As you walk through the village streets, you realize that perfume, like power, often builds a world around it. A world of masks and expectations, of luxury and violence, of seduction and betrayal. But here, in the simplest of lives, there is a different kind of beauty, one not based on fragrance or wealth, but on the shared experience of a world that doesn't need to be hidden. You reach a small bridge where the stream below hums softly in the quiet air. You pause for a moment, watching the water flow. It's clear, simple, real, and you know, in that moment, that this is the scent you've been searching for. Not the heady perfumes of Renaissance courts, not the dangerous poisons, not the carefully curated oils of nobility, but this. The clean, unvarnished air, the smell of life in its most honest form. Historians still argue whether perfume was ever about beauty or simply about survival. Some say it was a way to outwit death, to mask the rot of a world that constantly reminded you of your mortality. Others believe it was a rebellion against the mundane, an attempt to carve out something meaningful in a world full of noise. But you know now that you've found something that surpasses all of it. It's not just scent, it's presence. As the days pass, the sweet simplicity of village life continues to surround you. The air, heavy with the smell of freshly turned soil and wildflowers, seems to settle into your bones. You realize how long it's been since you truly felt present. Not in the hustle of city courts, not in the suffocating aroma of perfume and poison, but here, among the living, where the scent of the earth and the sky is enough. Yet, even in the peacefulness of this place, the shadow of your past travels follows you. You can't escape it. Every now and then, you find yourself catching a whiff of something, maybe the faintest hint of rose or musk, that stirs memories you've tried to leave behind. The elegance of courtly gatherings, the false promises of fragrant bliss, the dangerous allure of forbidden concoctions. They all return to you in fleeting moments, unbidden. One evening, as you sit in the village square, the scent of freshly baked bread mixing with the evening dew, a familiar figure approaches. It's the herbalist from the town you passed through weeks ago. She smiles, as though the years and miles haven't mattered. "I thought I'd find you here," she says, her eyes glinting with a knowing spark. "You've been searching for something, haven't you?" You nod, unsure of what to say. After all this time, after the weight of the cities, the masks, the poisons, you've been searching for peace, for clarity, for something real. She sits beside you, handing you a small pouch of herbs. You inhale deeply, a pure scent of rosemary and lavender filling your senses. "You see," she begins, "perfume, the kind they make in the cities, it's never just about the smell. It's about control. It's about shaping the world around you. But there's another kind of scent, one that's not about power, but about connection. Connection to the earth, to the people around you. This is real." You hold the pouch in your hand, feeling the weight of it in your palm. The simplicity of it strikes you. This is the kind of scent you've been looking for. Not the rich, overpowering concoctions of Renaissance courts, not the poisons or the masks, but something raw, something untouched. And it's in your hand now. The scent of rosemary, lavender, and earth. The smell of life in its most honest, pure form. Historians still debate whether the rise of perfumed luxury was truly a symbol of cultural sophistication or just a desperate attempt to conceal the harsher truths of life. Some argue it was about wealth and status, an invisible sign of superiority. Others believe it was born out of fear, a way to mask the rot of a world teetering on the edge of disease, war, and uncertainty. But here, in this moment, you realize something important. The pursuit of scent in all its forms isn't just about beauty or status. It's about survival. It's about finding a way to navigate a world full of noise, of rot, of danger. It's about creating something to hold on to when everything else seems out of control. You inhale the herbs again, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you feel the weight of everything you've been searching for begin to settle. The past, the dangerous, fragrant past, seems distant now, its cloying perfumes replaced by something fresh, something honest. You realize then that the search isn't over. It never will be. But maybe, just maybe, you found a way to breathe again, to live in the scent of the world as it is, without the masks, without the poisons, just the earth, just the air. As the sun sets behind the hills, casting long shadows over the fields, you reflect on how far you've come. The journey that began in the decadent halls of power, surrounded by intoxicating perfumes and dangerous plots, has brought you here, to a place where scent no longer masks life, but enhances it. The earth beneath your feet, the breeze through the trees, the aroma of wild herbs in the air, it all feels true. You walk through the fields, a quiet hum of insects around you, the soft rustle of leaves as they shift in the breeze. The world seems slow, but in the best way. There's no rush here. No need for perfume to signify power or wealth. No need for the masks or the hiding. You're simply here with the scent of the earth, of flowers blooming around you, of trees heavy with fruit. And yet, in the quiet of this space, you can't help but think of the past, the cities, the courts, the intrigue, the perfumes that were at once beauty and danger. It feels so far away now, and yet the memories still linger like faint traces of scent on the wind. But perhaps that's the point. In the end, scent isn't something that can be easily erased. It's a part of us, woven into the fabric of history, into the very way we experience the world. Perfume, for all its dangers and decadence, is a part of who we are. The smells of the past, the rose and the civet, the lavender and the poison, will always have a place in our story.
But they don't have to control us.
And here, in this quiet corner of the world, you realize that the most powerful scent isn't the one that dominates or conceals, but the one that connects you to the world around you. The scent of the earth, of life, of simply being. As the final rays of sunlight filter through the trees, you breathe deeply, feeling the coolness of the air, the purity of the moment. And for the first time in a long time, you let go of the past, of all the layers of scent that once defined you. You stand there, in the fresh air, and you know that the journey isn't just about the destination. It's about feeling every moment along the way, the smells, the sights, the sounds, and learning to live in them. Historians still argue whether perfume was ever truly about beauty or if it was about survival, about pretending. Maybe it was a little of both. But here, in this peaceful place, you know one thing for certain. The most important scent of all is the one that lets you breathe freely, without fear, without masks. The journey is over, for now. And the scent of life in its purest form is all around you.